There's a serious flaw in the Airbnb system. If it's somebody's first time hosting, how is anybody supposed to know what they might do? The first few people who stay with them are putting a lot of faith in somebody who's completely untested. I'm sure 99% of the time it's all totally fine, but then there's that 1%. In my own experience, that faith nearly got me killed, and it's left me deeply traumatized. It was my first time using Airbnb. I was going back to my hometown, but none of my friends had room for me to stay with them, and I don't exactly have the relationship with my family that makes staying with them a very viable option. Since there aren't many good hotels in such a small town like mine, an Airbnb seemed like the only good option. I didn't pay any mind to the lack of ratings for the place I picked and how the host had just joined the platform a week ago. I really didn't think it mattered. He was a fairly average-looking guy, a middle-aged, balding family man with enough money to own 2 properties. When I got there, I realized that it was a lot smaller than it initially seemed to be, only 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The larger of the 2 bedrooms was the one I was supposed to stay in. It was in the back of the house with a window facing into the backyard. The host talked to me for a while before leaving. Strangely, even looking back, knowing everything I know now, in the beginning, he was completely unassuming of the person he turned out to be. Anyways, I went out with my friends the first night and I came back late and intoxicated, crashing on the bed pretty much immediately. I woke up sometime in the afternoon, hungover and groggy, pulling myself out of bed to get up and use the bathroom. But when I tried to open the bedroom door, it was locked. I turned the lock the other way, but it didn't make a difference. It still wouldn't open. I got a sinking feeling, but I was still in disbelief. Was it really locked from the other side? How is that even possible? Dumbfounded, I walked over to the nightstand to grab my phone, but it wasn't there. I knew I'd left it charging right there by the bedside, but it simply wasn't there. My mind was really starting to race. Maybe I'd left my phone in my luggage, I thought, but yet again, I was stumped when I looked for my bags in the closet and none of them were there. Panic and confusion were setting in deep. I started pacing around the room, just looking through the sheets and all the shelves and decorations. But the more I looked, the more it became clear that none of what I'd brought with me was in the room. I took a seat on the bed to try and calm my nerves. I was feeling claustrophobic in the room and at a loss for what I could do. I was also still hazy from the hangover and I was dehydrated with a splitting headache, and since I couldn't get out of the room to get any water, I thought to open the window and let in some fresh air. And then if I couldn't figure anything else out, I would just climb through. But to my horror, the window that looked out into the yard yesterday was now boarded up. My heart literally sank and I wanted to throw up all of a sudden. This can't be happening, I thought. Everything reached a boiling point and I snapped. Running to the door, I was trying to beat it down while screaming bloody murder for the host to come let me out. Then, to my surprise, the door opened. But it came out swinging so fast that it hit me in the face and knocked me back. In came the host with a goddamn shotgun pointed straight at me. The look in his eyes and the tone of his voice. Everything about him was totally different. He had this twisted smile on his face like a true serial killer. And everything he said to me then, I'm forced to remember. So you're finally up? You were so out of it last night, you made it easy for me to come in and set up your room for what I plan to do with you. Hey man, let me go, you sick son of a bitch, I shouted back, only for him to level the shotgun square in my face. He just pretty much told me to shut up if I didn't want to make things worse for myself. I then eyed the open doorway behind him, seriously considering trying to make a break for it and get past him. But he saw where I was looking. I wouldn't try that if I were you, he said. The whole house is locked up. You and I are going to spend a lot of time here together. The sicko just laughed and smiled. I don't care about getting away with it. I've wanted to do something like this for as long as I can remember. I'm going to break you, he said. You'll suffer and suffer, and you'll beg me to let you go. First you'll be mad, you'll threaten me, then you'll say that you'll do anything I want. When that doesn't work, when your soul is totally ruined from everything I plan to put you through, you'll beg for the sweet release of death. Then, and only then, will I finally kill you. After that, I'm not sure how long I'll gloat over your shredded corpse, but eventually, I guess I'll take myself out too. I don't have any intention of continuing this life in prison. Everything he said hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt dizzy and I had to sit down. This amused my host. It's all settling in now, isn't it? He said with a smile. There's no way out of this for you. I struggled to even look at him, but I had to ask. Don't you have a family or someone to care of? His face turned sour when I mentioned family. Clearly they weren't around anymore. I don't have anything left to live for, he said, but you do. That's what will make this whole process enjoyable for me, watching you give up on it all. My friends will still wonder where I am, I said, suddenly finding the courage to say. They'll come looking for me. Yeah, and I'll know when they text you that our time is up, he replied. At which point, right when you think you'll be saved, you'll actually be doomed. Isn't that a beautiful twist of fate? He said. I fell silent. I still couldn't fathom what was happening. I barely even heard what he said next. A second later, he caught me off guard with the butt of his gun, striking me square in the face. I didn't fall unconscious, but I was so dazed that I collapsed to the floor, and from there he continued to beat me and kick me in the chest. After he ran out of breath, he left the room and locked me inside once again. I spent the next eternity trapped in that room, while I had no clue if anyone was coming to help me. Every few hours he would come back in and torture me. I was beaten, strangled, cut, and raped relentlessly, over and over again for 4 days. My feet and hands were broken so I couldn't move or fight back. I was bleeding internally and externally, and just like he said would happen, my mind was completely shattered. It got to the point that I almost wished he would have gone through with killing me at the end of it. However, I forgot that I told my friends where I was staying, and after I didn't come out to see them for a few days, they went looking for me. But unlike what the sicko said he would do, he squeezed out every last second of torturing me that he could. And when the police stormed his house, he blew his own brains out and left me alive. But then again, I really wish I wasn't. My husband and I travel often, and we've grown to prefer staying in Airbnbs over hotels. It's homier, more unique, and a more personal experience, which we used to like. Because rather than getting checked in by some soulless desk jockey, you would actually have a conversation with the host as human beings. However, our most recent stay in an Airbnb is likely to be our last. My husband and I have stayed in this specific Airbnb on 2 other occasions, and we really liked it. The decor was very warm and compatible with, shall we say, romantic adventures, I guess. We booked this Airbnb, which was half of a duplex, when we went to San Francisco to visit our old friends, who lived in a really nice community outside of the Bay Area. We spent a lot of time with those friends, but we loved having a place for us to spend some alone time that didn't feel like your average stale hotel room. We started to befriend the host, too. He's a single man about 35 years old who lives alone with his cats. My husband and I always noticed how enthusiastic he was about hosting us. He would invite us over to his side of the house for breakfast every morning, which we usually accepted because he was a surprisingly good cook. It was a bit strange to sit and eat with him, though, sometimes. He asked a lot of questions, most of which weren't that weird, but some of which were rather personal. For instance, he would ask us how long we'd been married. Then he'd ask us if we planned on making any children. I stressed that he just phrased it just that way, as in making children. Then he would ask if we've ever practiced the teachings of Kama Sutra, if we wanted any tips or advice or even help switching up things in the bedroom, at which point my husband would finally shut him down with a few stern words. We ran into awkward silences like that at least once every time we ate with the host, but we suffered through it because it was worth the delicious free food. Whenever it got tense, I would try to lighten the mood with a joke. One time, when the host had pressed us about our fertility in the bedroom, I tried to proudly declare that we definitely had all the bases covered to our liking. I was hoping that it would be a funny end to the subject, but it backfired. He started laughing hysterically, like way too intensely. He was even having trouble speaking. But he did eke out something that sounded like, "Oh, I know you do." The suggestion of an invasion of privacy really pissed off my husband, who stood up from his seat very abruptly and yelled at the host, demanding that he explain exactly what he meant by that. The host stopped laughing immediately, then stuttered around for a few seconds before eventually admitting that he had heard us making love through the walls the other night. My husband and I can be loud, so we were more or less forced to accept his explanation. That all happened the second time we stayed. The third time we flew out to see our friends, we were discussing where we wanted to stay, and my husband brought up all the weird things the host would say and suggested that maybe we should go somewhere else. Unfortunately, we looked around for other options and there just wasn't anything as high quality and affordable and in the right location, so we settled. Literally within minutes of making the reservation, the host texted us through the Airbnb app and he expressed an excessive amount of excitement, saying that he loved us and that he was so happy we were choosing to stay with him again. We kind of rolled our eyes and said, "Here we go again," but at the time it was still a little funny. When we arrived, the host tried to wait on us hand and foot, but we had gotten in late because our flight was delayed, so we were very tired and we asked to be left alone for the night. The host was seemingly sad about this for a second, but then as he walked away, he couldn't help but letting out this telltale smile creep up on his face. My husband didn't see it, but I did. I was about to mention it to him, but I was distracted by something when we walked into the bedroom. We noticed right away that it was different somehow, like things had been rearranged since the last time we were there. We talked about it for a few minutes, but I didn't think much of it and neither did my husband. We probably would have fallen asleep within a few minutes if we didn't realize that right after getting into bed that we hadn't made love in a few days. Because just from thinking about it and being back in that room, we got into the mood. I won't go into detail, but the long and short of it is that there was a lamp on the bedside table that wasn't there before. And because we weren't used to it being there, in our excitement, we knocked it over. The whole thing broke apart when it hit the floor, causing us to stop what we were doing to pick up the mess. However, my husband discovered something in the pile of broken ceramic. Something that had looked like a button just a few seconds ago. A spy camera. My reaction was to feel like I was about to throw up, but I've never seen my husband's face go flush with such intense rage so quickly. He got dressed and stormed out of the room, then broke down the door into the host side of the house and barged into his bedroom. I didn't follow, but I listened. My husband threatened to kill him if he didn't explain himself, after which there was an extended heated interrogation. I couldn't make it all out, but from what my husband tells me, he got the host to admit, through a great deal of crocodile tears, that he had been spying on us in the bedroom the entire time, and that he had just put up additional cameras when he knew we were coming again. We tried to get him to delete all the footage, but the worst part is that it was far too late for that. Because the host is such a perverted weirdo, he posted the footage he had of us to several porno websites, which essentially means there's no way of knowing how many people have seen us in our private time together, and there's practically no way of ever completely erasing the footage from existence if other people have already downloaded it. Needless to say, this ordeal ruined more than just our vacation with friends, and we are only in the beginning of the process of pressing charges. Otherwise, I would have been much more open to exposing every little detail pertaining to him as a way of getting revenge. But I'd rather see him rot in prison, so I'm going to do this the right way and keep this anonymous. I used to rent out my garage apartment as an Airbnb. For the most part, I never had any major problems, so I never put the bookings through much scrutiny before accepting them. However, if I ever decide to host on Airbnb again, that would be something I'd change about the way I do things. I'm sure it was only a matter of time before I had an experience with a guest that was so deranged and so downright disturbing that I had to stop hosting, just so I would never have to deal with anything like it ever again. The guest in question was this guy I'll refer to as Kyle. He was a single man in his early 30s that wanted to stay for a week. He didn't mention that he was traveling or anything, he just said he badly needed a place to stay, which was a little unusual, but I didn't think much of it. When I met him to check in, he didn't have much stuff either, just a duffel bag, a backpack, and busted up bicycle. I could tell just by looking at him that he was in a rough spot, maybe even homeless, which made me wonder how he afforded the fee. He seemed like he hadn't showered or taken care of himself in a few weeks, and in general, his demeanor was quite skittish. However, at that point, he wasn't rude at all, he was actually quite gracious and appreciative. Despite him being this way, I didn't treat him any different. After I gave him the usual tour, I left him to his own and I told him to do his own thing like I would tell anyone else. Unfortunately, as the days went by, I gradually realized that Kyle was going to be problematic. I could hear music blasting from inside constantly, and no matter how many times I texted him to turn it down, he never did. When I knocked on the door to tell him in person, I would see his shadow moving around inside and hear him frantically rummaging through stuff like he was trying to hide something. But he didn't answer the door. I debated entering with my own key, but I decided against it. He was really starting to get on my nerves more than anything, since I never had to do that before. But the biggest red flag that I should have taken more seriously was the smell that emanated from the door. It was like burning plastic or something. I had no idea what that stench could be coming from at the time, but afterwards it became very clear what he was doing in there and what was causing it. I should have kicked him out a lot sooner, but after several days, I figured I would just let him stay until the end of his booking since it wasn't too far away. After he'd been there for a week, it was finally time. Guests usually just leave when it comes time to check out, and I was thankful for not having to interact with him again. I was also glad that the obnoxious music had finally stopped, but I was nervous about going in and seeing what kind of mess he made. I had to go in and look, though, because I was the only one who was going to clean it up, and let me just say, I was appalled. The entire place was trashed. All the furniture had been moved around. There was junk all over the place. Food stuck to just about every surface in the kitchen, and one of the pots was completely ruined from being caked in this white substance that I couldn't identify for the life of me. The whole apartment reeked, too. With how bad of a shape the garage was in, I was dreading to look in the bathroom. Strangely, when I got there, the door was locked. Annoyed, I left for a minute to go into my house and grab a bobby pin so I could unlock the door. But when I got back, the bathroom door was open. A chill ran down my spine and I was suddenly very on edge. Just then, I heard a noise from the kitchen that made my heart sink. It was glass breaking. I crept through the hallway and stopped at the corner, then slowly peeked around to look, just to see Kyle standing there with a broken bottle in one hand and a metal baseball bat in the other. When I looked in his eyes, I could tell he was twisted on something, and seeing me caused him to go ballistic and start screaming at me. "Who are you? Get out of my house. Don't mess with me. I swear to God I'll kill you." I started to back away toward the door, avoiding any sudden movements while I tried to explain myself. "Kyle, it's me. The host. I let you stay here, remember?" "I don't remember you. Don't try to trick me," he said. "I'm not lying to you, I swear. Look, let's just talk about this. Can you put all of that down?" He just started screaming at me after that, telling me to shut up over and over again. Then Kyle charged at me out of the blue. I turned around and ran right out the door, but just before I was clear around the corner, I felt the glass bottle smash into my back, shattering and cutting me up pretty bad. I kept running, though, until I was able to get away safely. I got back into my house and I locked the door. From there, I called the police. I'm sure the standoff between Kyle and the cops is a whole other story too, but unfortunately I missed most of it. All I saw was them go in with 4 or 5 officers and come out carrying Kyle by the hands and feet, double bound in handcuffs and screaming bloody murder. As I found out, Kyle was smoking crack the entire time he was staying in my garage apartment, and he ended up getting so fried that he forgot he was just a guest that was supposed to leave after a week. After that, there was always a bad taste in my mouth every time I thought about letting another stranger stay on my property, so I canceled on all my bookings and deleted my account. I don't think I'll ever try my luck with it again.